I've heard a lot of students and people new to animation ask which is better to animate with, IK or FK, but it's not an either or. Neither is better in totality. It totally depends on what you're animating. IK stands for inverse kinematics and FK stands for forward kinematics. Forward kinematics, or FK, is when each bone follows the parent bone down the hierarchy, down that chain of command. So when you look at the arm, for example, the shoulder is the parent bone, and the elbow is the child of the shoulder, and the wrist is the child of the elbow. So when you move the shoulder, everything else follows because the child of the shoulder is the elbow, so that's going to move with the shoulder as the shoulder moves, and the child of the elbow is the wrist. So as the elbow follows the shoulder, the wrist is going to follow the elbow. So it all moves down that chain forwards. So inverse kinematics, or IK, is the inverse of that. It starts at the bottom of the hierarchy. It's inverted, so you can grab the wrist controller and move that around and the rest of the arm will follow. They both have their place, like I said before, but a lot of people tend to think that IK is easier to animate with, especially people who are new to animation, because they feel like if they can just grab that controller that they're trying to move around and place it where it needs to be, that's the job's done and that's the easiest way to do it, rather than start at the top and manipulate every bone and rotate it to get that thing where you want it to be. Like if you want your hand to be on the table, they feel like, well, why don't I just grab the controller and plunk it there and now my hand's on the table, rather than rotating the shoulder up and then the elbow across and then the wrist down and so on. But this is an inaccurate way of thinking about it, because for some things, FK genuinely is better. It gives you really nice smooth arcs and a lot more natural movement on the way to the pose that you're trying to achieve. If you're just grabbing your IK controller and placing your hand where it needs to end up, you're gonna get an erratic arc on the way there. And animation is not just about going from key pose to key pose, it's also about the journey to get to that key pose, the in-betweens. So you need to think carefully about the actions that your character is doing and what's gonna benefit them the most. And also, you're not marrying your decision. If you decide to start an action with FK, you can then swap over to IK, so you're not stuck with what you decide to use at first. You can swap between the two. Most rigs will have an IK-FK switch, although it can be a bit buggy, but I'm going to show you a bit later how to get through that bugginess so you can have a pretty seamless switch between IK and FK. So you don't have to decide on one and just stick with it. But for instance, if you're animating a walk cycle, your arms are swinging back and forth. You want a nice smooth arc in that movement. You really should use FK. If you're using IK for a walk cycle, I think you need to rethink some of your life decisions there, because you're not making the right decisions, obviously. Use FK for a walk cycle or anything that requires a nice smooth arc, which are most natural movements, as we know. Our joints rotate naturally and that creates arcs in our movements. But for your legs on a walk cycle, you'd use IK because you want your feet to stay planted on the ground as your character walks. And that's what IK is ideal for. If you have a body part that needs to stay in a certain position while the rest of the body moves, IK is really great for that because it stays where you placed that controller. For legs, you can usually stick with IK because your feet stay planted wherever you've placed them. So generally, you would use IK a lot more for the feet than for the arms. But for arms, FK is generally the way to go about executing an action, because you don't want to have to go and place your controller somewhere and then have to go back and fiddle with the in-betweens to try and achieve a really nice smooth arc there. And then also you start getting issues with timing and stuff like that. Like, cool, IK gets you your desired pose, but what are you gonna have to go back and counter animate to get it to look nice? And I know a lot of people do use IK a lot and the animation can look great, but it's a lot of unnecessary fixing up that you actually don't really need to do if you just use IK and FK properly. So I'm using the Kayla Unlimited Rig here for this demonstration, just so you can get a better idea of what I'm talking about. It's a really cool rig and super reasonably priced for what it does, so you should check it out if you're looking for a good, versatile rig to practice with. So anyway, for the character here, the limbs on the left side, our left, not her left, I'm talking about screen left, are set to IK and her limbs on screen right are FK. You'll notice that the controls for IK and FK are different. On the IK arm, we've got the hand controller that we can grab and move around, and this elbow controller so we can adjust the elbow, and likewise with the leg, but we don't have that shoulder control or the thigh control that you get with the FK arm and leg, because those things would be affected by the movement of the hand or foot that you're manipulating, so you don't need those controllers when you're using IK. So let's say I want this character to lean against the wall while she's talking to someone. You might be thinking, well, FK would be nice because you can get those sweet arcs with all that lovely rotation, but maybe you should use IK because once your hand is on the wall, you want it to stay there, right? But IK doesn't look so great when you're trying to get a smooth, natural looking arc and the movement on the way there. So what do? So here for this first part of the action, it's obviously better to use FK to get that arc and natural movement because IK would just cause a bunch of unnecessary work to get it to look right. But once her hand is on the wall, we want it to stay there while she talks or whatever, because it would look whack if she now moved her body and her whole arm followed, and you don't want to have to try to counter animate that movement and keyframe the arm to keep it like that while the rest of her body moves, because that would be ridiculous. So that would be IK's time to shine. And all we need to do is utilize the IK-FK matching, or on some rigs it's called IK-FK switch. So you can animate part of the action in FK, then switch to IK. And most rigs will have a way of doing this. Like if I select this controller here and use this NG picker, I can keyframe changing between the two really nicely and seamlessly. That's something that's really awesome about this rig, amongst other things. Now, because the FK and IK systems are actually two different skeletons that you need to swap between, some rigs will not blend that well between the two when you switch them. Like if I do this here on this arm without the picker that I used before, then it requires a bit of a workaround, and this is how it is with a lot of rigs. And no, I don't mean manually trying to eyeball it and keyframe the whole arm to match. That's gonna take a million years that you don't have. So I want my IK arm to match where my FK arm was. What I'm gonna do here is go over to the outliner and find the IK wrist control, select it, and then hold down control and select the FK wrist control. Then I go up to modify, then match transformations, match all transformations. Then I'm going to do the same for the elbow. Then select the elbow controller from the elbow that's at the position you want to match to. Then again, go to modify, match transformations, match all transformations. And there you have it, the two are matched. You can keyframe your IK position and carry on animating with IK now. So hopefully that helped you if you were having any issues understanding IK and FK and the different situations that you should be using them in. And also if you didn't know that you can switch between the two, so you don't have to stick with one or the other. They both have their pros and cons for different situations. Thank you to my patrons for the support as always. I really appreciate it. To the rest of you who don't know, I do have a Patreon page where I share works in progress, helpful animation resources that I've come across or made myself that I share with you guys. For some of my tiers, I also give a monthly critique to animation shots that they've submitted to me. So go and check that out if you're interested, if you want to support the channel. And to the rest of you, drop a like on the video if you did like the video. Maybe think about subscribing, it's free, so do with that what you will. Thanks for watching, guys. Love ya. Bye.